Well, hello. This is all about a delicious meal that can be made in a little bit of time. And it is meatballs, and you can have them with spaghetti. It's a great red sauce to go with them, but it's just a classic meatball. And that's what I love about this. And we want to give them tons of flavor with spices, with a lot of moisture, with a good sauce. So we're gonna get started with the meatballs. And the important part here is we have the mixture in the bowl of beef and pork. Together they make a great meatball because beef has really good flavor. Pork can be really tender and adds a little bit more of a lightness to the meatball. Together they make the meatball you want. So before we actually get started flavoring them, we want to do the panade. Now, I've talked about this before, but a panade is bread and milk that you mash together. And what you're going to do with it is put it into the meatball. And that helps retain extra moisture. It makes it more tender. It really does make a huge difference. So I'm taking bread, and I like to use fresh bread in the sense that it is not dried bread. It's not breadcrumbs. It is just bread that I took the crust off of because I only usually have more of an artisan bread here with a crusty crust, and it does not work well, and it does not really go down to nothing like I want it to. So I'm just tearing this up into pieces, as you can see. And you can see I discard, or eat, I should say eat. I eat the crust because it's delicious. But then all I'm gonna do is pour milk over it. So we have whole milk because in general, whether you're cooking, whether you're baking, whole milk has a lot of flavor, and it has a little bit more of that fat, which means it has more flavor. So what I'm gonna do is work this bread into that milk. And at first it kind of looks like this is pointless and this is gross. But what you're doing is you're doing this and stirring it. You're adding that moisture into the bread, and slowly it's gonna absorb it, and we're gonna make a mush or a mash out of it, which is a really bizarre thing. But guys, if you do this with your meatballs, actually you could do this with hamburgers too, it makes such a difference, and you're gonna have the best ones you've had. So I'm gonna continually be mashing this until it's more of a paste, and then we'll keep going. So you can see now this is just like a mash, it's a mush, and I'm just gonna let it sit there until we're ready to put it in, but look at that. It is gonna make a huge difference in these meatballs, and it's in a step that's it's very important. So now for these meats, we wanna make sure we add a lot of flavor, and the first thing that really helps make sure you flavor is salt. Salt, especially when you're having a good amount of meat like this, makes a huge difference. And if you're cooking at home, if you're making real food, not eating out, not having processed foods, you hardly can overeat on salt because we add so much less salt than prepackaged foods. So I'm gonna add some pepper too, and then come some of my favorite flavorings. And that is a little bit of red pepper flake. We're not adding enough to make it full on spice, but it just gives it a little hint of that warmth that really balances out the flavors well. Now I am using all dried herbs here because I find them easy in the winter. They're always delicious. They have tons of flavor. Some dried basil. I think we get into this mode where we think, oh, everything you have to have fresh, you have to have the best. Dried is the best too, and it has a ton of flavor. Oregano. My oregano and thyme is actually out of my garden in the summer, and I dry it. And so it's a great time to use up those. And you actually use less herbs of the dried because they're condensed, they're dried, they have more essential oils right in them. So I have the herbs in there. I have all that flavor. We're also gonna make sure to add an egg because an egg just kind of helps hold everything together. We're gonna add in our panade that we made, that bread mixture. Look at that, look how mashed, and yeah, it's weird. It makes such a difference. We're gonna add that right in there, all of it. Then I like to grate some onion in. Now the reason I'm grating it is, you know, a meatball is kind of a fine mixture, and when you grate in the onion, it's the easier way to just kind of get it fully incorporated and not get like pieces of onion in there. I don't want pieces of little onion when I'm biting into a meatball. Instead, I just want that flavor all throughout. So when you grate it in there, you have it really kind of get all mixed in easily, just like the bread would, just like the spices will, and it makes a huge difference. So you don't have to have chunks of onion in there. I think it's a lot better way to do it. Once that's in there, I also want to put in some garlic. Garlic is essential. And again, like kind of I am doing with the onion, I'm gonna use a garlic press to put it in. You could mince it really fine, that would work well, but a garlic press does the work for you. So I'm gonna smash it right in there. This is all my homegrown garlic, and it's a great way to use it. And look how it just comes out. It's pressed. We don't have to do any of the work. We don't have to mince it. That's the best part. And then you can just clean them out. I love a garlic press. I find they're underutilized. They're just wonderful. You don't have to do any work. So I'm gonna press them in again. And look at that, all that garlic goodness, the juices, all of it goes right in there. And then to finally add a little bit more flavor and kind of just a great spark to it is some Parm. And I will always use fresh Parm when I can. It's a lot different than the powdered stuff you buy in a can. And I know we get used to that, but the thing is, fresh Parm, if you can find it, it has so much more flavor. It has nuance to it. It has a depth to it that you can't get. And the thing is, what I love about Parm, it does not take a lot to have a lot of flavor impact. And that's the best part. You can keep a big chunk in your fridge, add little bits of it, save the rind. That rind on the Parm is amazing to throw into soups, to stews, a pot of beans, whatever it is. So I'm gonna Parm, there we go. And now we're gonna mix it all up. Now this is gonna get messy. It's what it is. You get messy, but it's best to use your hands because it really, in this case, since we have that panade, since we have the egg, we want it to work into each other really well and we want it to be fully mixed. We don't want bits of the meat kind of exposed. We want it to be fully incorporated. So I'm gonna sit here and actually work this together with my hands really well until it's fully incorporated. Then we're just gonna make meatballs. I mixed it together really well, and now I'm just forming the balls. So you could do that by eye with your hands. You could also use a big scoop, which I just always find if you can, it portions it nicely. It makes it really, to me, easy. And then if you want to add some to each one or whatever it is, you can do that nicely. And that's what I kind of like. Like I like to come out with usually, I'm gonna just say 12 meatballs about. And so you can see after this, I still have some, and that's when I'll just take some on each one to make my balls and roll them, because I just find that easier. I think it's always easier once you even have them portioned, whether you're using a scoop or not, to take your hands and form it better. It's gonna give you a smoother surface, which to me is easier, and it's gonna make everything just work together better. See how you can make a nicer looking ball like this than like that. So you wanna pick it up, form it with your hands, so you get a nice uniform round meatball. That will just, one, it will look better, and then we're gonna brown them off in some oil. So if you have them more shaped how you want them now, it just is easier to work later. So I'm gonna go through, shape them, finish it off. We're gonna start browning them in the oil, put the sauce together. You know, it's a meal that takes a few steps, but everyone's gonna enjoy it and it's gonna be totally worth it. I have the oil heated, which you can tell because they're sizzling as I put them in, and that's what you want. So what browning does is really create a crust. It adds more flavor, and it just makes them look more like a traditional meatball. So I'm gonna try to brown them on a few sides, turn them slightly. We're not cooking them through. We're gonna put them back on here and then put them in the oven. You can put them back on here because they're not fully baked, and then we're gonna fully roast them off. But once you get that brown on them, that little bit of crust, you're gonna see why we're doing it. And then we're gonna do the second batch, and we'll move on and make the sauce. I'm taking the final 2 meatballs off, and you can see what we created was this beautiful crust on all of them. It got some nice browning, it looks nice, it's gonna add flavor, and now we're gonna put them in the oven so they can actually bake fully all the way through. Because right now, they just have that crust on them, but they're not baked through. And now we have all this beautiful oil, all this fond on the bottom of the skillet, the flavor. This is now what we're gonna create the sauce in. I have a pot for noodles, which you can do however you like to do noodles, but this is the sauce that's gonna really create all that delicious red sauce to go on top of the meatballs, or if you're gonna do noodles with it. So I'm gonna start again by grating onion. I think when it comes to a sauce, grated onion is just the way to go. It integrates into the sauce really easily. Look at how it's just right now with the oil, going into the oil, and it's right, just instantly being flavored and seasoned by the meat that we had in there, by the olive oil that we started with. And that's the thing, we're adding flavor all along, and that's what I love about it. So you can just continually not worry about big pieces of onion, about anything not cooking. That's the best part. So I have that in there, and then we need the garlic. We need some good garlic to go into the sauce, just like we did into the meat. So I'm gonna take my garlic press, I'm gonna just press this right in. You can see like right there, it just goes right that way. All the juices go into it, all the deliciousness goes into it. And if you get any little bits of skin, you can just take them out. And we're gonna go right in again and do some more. Look at that. Like how could that be wrong? So I'm gonna scrape that off, get it right into that oil. This is what I love about this. We're just adding flavor, adding seasoning all along the way. So we're gonna kind of mimic what we have in the meatballs. We're gonna add some red pepper flakes, not a lot, but enough to give you a little bit of heat. We're gonna add some basil. That's gonna really kind of up the flavor. And now these are dried, but I do still like to bloom them just a little bit in that hot oil. It kind of wakes them up, brings out some of their flavors. We have the dried oregano. We have some dried thyme. Like, how wonderful is it that we can use these things from our garden, even in the winter? And then just a little, I think this is essential. It's not traditional, but what about me is some fennel seed. I like a little bit of fennel seed in my sauce. I think it makes a complete difference. When I home can my sauce, what I can and then use all throughout the winter, I always put a little bit of fennel in it and it makes a huge difference. So you can tell all that, it smells so good, is getting woken up. It's really starting to just add something. We're gonna add a little bit of salt, not too much, because some of the salt kind of came from the meat, but we just need a little bit more. And now we can put in our tomatoes. So that is cooking. That's what you want. You want that warm oil. You want all those to be activated. And then we're gonna put in our tomatoes. Here we go with our diced tomatoes. I like them with the juice right in there. Look at that. And now we're gonna let this cook. We're gonna let it cook all together. We're gonna let it slowly just really kind of come together as a sauce, and that's what you want. You want this to really bring in those flavors. You want this to kind of simmer so it doesn't quite have the juiciness, but condenses its flavors, puts them all together, and instantly this is what I love. We're picking up all those little bits on the bottom of the skillet. So all that meat that browned, that was flavor, and it's now going to flavor this sauce, which is what kind of the best part to me of this is. You're actually flavoring it, and you can just smell it. You can smell all those flavors really mixing together. Once now this is gonna come to a simmer, I'm just gonna turn it to a low simmer once it really starts going and let it slowly simmer while the meatballs are baking, while the noodles are cooking. So when this is done, we can just put it all together. I just drained the spaghetti and I'm putting it back in this hot pot. So spaghetti or any noodle in general, you wanna slightly undercook it, which is what's called al dente. So when you put the hot sauce with it, it really absorbs it and kind of brings the two flavors together. And that to me is like one of the most important parts of anything. So I'm putting most of this sauce we created, or let's say 3/4 of it, in with the pasta because you want that to work together. You want it to really absorb those flavors. So I'm just gonna kind of stir that in, that hot pasta with that good fresh sauce. Look at that. And that to me, you always have to dress a pasta, dress it right before, let it soak and absorb so those flavors really come together. While those are sitting there, we had pulled the meatballs out, we as in me and you, when they got done, and we're just putting them in this hot sauce. Because what I want them to do too is kind of, again, marry some of those flavors, get a little bit of that goodness on them. I mean, look how beautiful they are. Since we spent the time to brown them, to give them that crust, that really added flavor, and look how good it made them look. That's the important part here, is it made them look delicious because we eat with our eyes, but all these different steps too are adding flavor all along the way. So I like to make sure that these have some of that beautiful fresh sauce with those pieces of tomato, and that's what I love. So we can actually marry all that together because the sauce already, we cooked it in that same liquid that we cooked the tomatoes in, that we cooked the meat in, that all cooked together. Then when we made the sauce, it brought up some of those wonderful meat delicious flavors and they married. And so we're just creating layers and layers of flavor, and that's the important part. So here we have some pasta, some spaghetti, have you? And that's what I love, is you get that beautiful pieces of tomato in there. Now, hey, I'm not here to start a war. If you have a red sauce or a pasta sauce that you always make, that your family makes, go for it. I'm not saying this is traditional. This is what I do and this is what I love. But that's the best part about food. We each have our own and we each have what makes ours like perfect and delicious. So then we have a meatball. I think you need some fresh Parm on it because we're alive and we may as well enjoy it. And we're gonna put that right on top and look at that meal. You have the pasta, you have the meatballs, you have the sauce. The star here is the meatball. It is. It's what we spent the most time on. It's what we just, look at that, look how it cuts. What I love is you can see right inside of it. You can see all the spices. You can see all those wonderful flavors and notes. I want you guys to try this. This is so good. I love it. What's great is these are standalone meatballs. If you just want a meatball for some reason, make these. If you just want to enjoy them on their own, do it. If you want to have it with a sauce and a pasta, here you go. Make the sauce, make the pasta, put it together. That's the best part. It's a fresh sauce, so it's bright. It has the pieces of tomato, which I love, so it's a little bit lighter than like a heavy one. And that's what's so great about this. It's delicious all together, and you get all those spices and flavors work together to make something really delicious. So what do I hope you do? I hope you try this. I hope you have fun, and I hope you make a great meal for your family, because guess what? If I can do this, anyone can do this. So share this video around, because when you share, yeah, it helps me, but it helps everyone else find it too, and that's the best part, so we can all make food together. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe, and all my other recipes, they're all on my website. That's where they live, and that's where you can get them and print them. So until next time, make some good food and enjoy it. That's what it's all about.